Hi everyone, today I am in Siem Reap in Cambodia. I'm on tour with Reid Coen of Imprint Tours, and we are here sitting down with our local guide named Keung, and he's incredibly interesting. He's had a fascinating life, and I wanted you to get to know him a little bit. So Reid's going to ask him a few questions, and he'll tell us a few stories about what it was like growing up in Cambodia.
So Keung, this is our third trip together, and I've heard a lot of your stories as you've taken us through the temples at Angkor Wat, and I found them to be incredibly fascinating. And it's one of the reasons I always ask for you as my guide, is not only your tremendous knowledge of the area and your educational approach to your job, but your personal story. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd really like you to share that story.
I'm happy to share.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've been a local guy for 20 years, and 20 years so I started my life, and I grew up in a tough time, and in the military, and working in a guest house, and then into the tour guide business. So when I first started, I would say I knew nothing. English, I knew about 500 words, and then I just kept moving up, and so learning more. So if you have any questions, please.
Well, right just there you mentioned your military background. I think Sarah's fans would really be interested to know about the context of that, why you were in the military, that whole part of the story. And
the story is I grew up in the farm, but then my parents decided to send me over into the city and live in an orphanage because of the war.
What war are we talking about?
Well, the civil war with the communist troop. So they tried to come into the village and kidnap kids, from where I grew up into the military. So my parents consider that's not the right place to be. So then,
I'm sorry to interrupt. So we're talking about the Khmer Rouge, right? That civil war where Pol Pot comes to power and is in charge in Cambodia for a lot of years, and there's a lot of horrible things that happen. So you lived through that yourself.
Yes, I came through all this tough time and this horrible time. So I was taken here with my sister into the city and live in an orphanage, and we'll go to the school here. But unfortunately, and after a year, what the government did, this is something that we could not believe. They sent militaries into the schools where I study, where my sister studied, and they took us into the truck and sent to the war. So I
How
was
old were you at the time?
13 years old.
13 years old.
I was just a skinny boy.
They gave you a gun and...
Well, I was 13 years old at that time, considered big enough to go to the war.
Wow.
So my first toys I was given to play with that was AK-47.
Your first toy was an
my first toys, being a child, being a boy, and playing with that toys, that was not fun. So this is something that you don't want to learn and you don't want to play with, but somehow they give you no choice. So when you learn to shoot, and you learn to protect yourself, and you learn to eat all the horrible things to survive.
What sort of horrible things did you have to eat?
Leeches.
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 Oh,
it tastes like...
Not lychees.
No, leeches. It tastes like rubber band. Chewy, and that's what I said, we don't consider ourselves as a human being. Human being would not eat all these kinds of things. But
So you're saying that this experience was a dehumanizing one for you, being forced to eat horrible things and carry a gun and maybe try to kill people.
Yeah.
Sort of took away a little bit of your
but
humanity.
I believe I would be taken with those people to the front line, to the war straight away. But it changed my life. That's what my father sacrificed for me. He came over he knew the government people were coming to take the kids from the school and sent to the war because he was part of the government. So he came in and he negotiated with the commander. So instead, he goes to the war. And I was taken...
So your father volunteered to go to the war in your place. So you avoided going because he went
took
for
my
you.
turn.
Wow.
He took my turn. Even the commander promised to set me free, but they never did. So I was taken on a different truck to the temple complex and work as a security guard. So that's when I slept in the temple with my gun. And they gave me a job, to protect all those valuable stones. So I slept all over the place,
So he's speaking of Angkor Wat as well, which is
Yeah,
local guide
all
in
the
Angkor
main
Wat.
temple complex, and I slept inside there. But my favorite one is the Bayon, the Angkor Tomb.
Angkor Thom.
Yeah, I slept in there.
No,
And
this afternoon
that's
was
we're going in the afternoon with all the faces of Buddha. I like that one, the mosque. It was the first temple I saw when I was a boy, and the first temple I slept in.
really.
Yep. And
Wow.
once under the full moon light, and the light reflects over all the faces of Buddha, the Buddhas, up there. That was
Oh.
absolutely stunning.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine.
So over 2 years of doing this, and I left the military because that came the end of the war, so I could leave. So
About what year was the end of the war?
well, in late 1996, I would say, 1996. I remember late
All right.
1996.
So at that point, Pol Pot has been overthrown, and the revolution has sort of run its course.
He's get old and he's about to die.
Okay.
He's been sick at
Okay.
the time. So the government then decided to cut off, because the Khmer Rouge in the 96, they became more like a guerrillas, they had just a small number. So the government
Not a
said,
real organized government anymore, but just a
no,
guerrilla
it
force.
was not a government.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like a group of the robbery.
Of robbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Bandits?
yeah, they came into the villages and robbed the property of the people. So this is how they could survive. And so the government said, okay, let's cut off some of your guys, and so you can leave. You can leave the team and do whatever you want. So that's when I had my freedom. But it was sad, and I left the people. And some people still in there. Their name was still on the list. They have to be there. So I left them, and I didn't know what to do that time. So but then, luckily, I had a job in the city working for a Belgian man in a guest house. He owned a small guest house and a restaurant in Siem Reap. So he was part of the NGO, the non-government organization. So that was my first time to see the white skin and the blonde people.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I talked to them. It looks like I knew English, but no. I talked to them in Khmer, in Cambodian, and they talked to me in English. So yeah, somehow we communicated with the sign, and so I pick up the English word one by one. Then by the late 1997, on the advertising from the government, they need English-speaking people to work as the guide, taking the people around the temple. I didn't apply for the job, but because I said to myself, how could I do this job with 500 words of English? But it turned out I knew a lot more than the other people.
Ah.
So, and they gave me cash. So I was
Cash is
poor,
good.
seeing the cash in hand. Would you like to do it? Here's your money. I said, okay, I do it. So I signed up, to work as a tour guide. But it was a shame. I was on the bus with the people. All I could say to the people, now we're going to Angkor Wat. That's it. That's all I could do. So, and some people were mad. They were so upset. They expected the person who could speak English so well, and the person who could explain the entire history. But that was beyond my ability to do it. So step by step, I improve my English. So I don't say I speak English perfectly, but at least people can understand.
Yeah.
Well, like I
until
was
this
telling
day-
you on the bus the other day, you're really funny. And being funny in a foreign language is a sign of great skill of language abilities.
Yeah, I agree.
I try to give the best experience as much as possible, great experience to the people. I share, and not a lot of people now in Cambodia talk about the genocide and talk about the last part of the history, because it's not in a school program anymore. The government doesn't want people to remember this, doesn't want people to talk about this, because it's too much involved with the government people. But I do, because I don't want a genocide to be happening again. Not just in Cambodia, but everywhere in the world.
Right.
Living in the war, one day is just like 1 year. And it's hard to explain, the feeling of losing everyone, in your families, and losing the property, and it's from the scratch and started from nothing again when everything is destroyed. As you know about Cambodia in 1975 to 79, that's what the Western people refers to this, the year zero. We lost all the intellectual people. The countries, 90% of the cities, the buildings in the cities, the factories, totally destroyed. So after the fall of the Cultural Revolution, we had to start it again from nothing. And that's what I remember. Person who knew a little bit had to teach a person who knew nothing. And I remember of I was a child at that time, and I stood and watched all the trash and the dead body, the people shooting each other. So I don't want this happening. I don't want this. And I want kids and people live in a peaceful time and have a better life. So this is why I like to share everything with people who's on my tour.
Well, I can speak for my groups to say that we really appreciate the fact that you keep that in, that you're not ashamed to talk about the darker side of Cambodian history. Because Americans know a little bit about that, maybe from a movie or two, but it's a real education, and that's what we travel for, right? To have our horizons expanded, to understand that things are a little different in other parts of the world. So on behalf of my groups, thank you. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, I love to do it. I'm happy to do it.